Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the Eternal Light Church, creating colorful patterns on the polished wooden floor. Pastor Mitchell Bernard stood behind the pulpit, his deep, confident voice filling the space, compelling the congregation to listen intently to every word. His Sunday sermon on overcoming temptation elicited nods and quiet murmurs of agreement from those gathered. His wife, Rebecca, sat in the front row. Next to her sat their 15-year-old daughter, Sarah, dark-haired and serious beyond her years. They looked at Mitchell with undisguised pride. For the congregation of Eternal Light Church, the Bernard family was the embodiment of the ideal, pious, loving, devoted to their community. After the service, Mitchell stood at the church door, shaking hands and exchanging warm words with the congregation. When the last parishioner left the church, Mitchell allowed himself to breathe deeply. The smile slowly faded from his face, giving way to an expression of fatigue and concern. "You were wonderful today, dear," Rebecca said, approaching him and gently touching his hand. "Thank you," he replied, but there was no sincerity in his voice. "I have some things to take care of. I may be late." "Again?" Rebecca's voice sounded slightly disappointed. "Today is Sunday. I thought we could have lunch as a family." "I'm sorry, but it can't wait. Church finances." He didn't finish the sentence, avoiding her gaze. An hour later, sitting in his office behind closed blinds, Mitchell Bernard was nothing like the inspiring preacher his congregation knew. On the table in front of him lay not a Bible or sermon notes, but a sheet of paper with numbers and a name that made his heart sink: Victor Reyes. The debt was growing every week, and the payment deadline was approaching. His hand reached for the bottom drawer of the desk, where a flask of whiskey was hidden. Taking a sip, he took out his phone and opened the online casino app. "Just a couple of bets," he muttered under his breath. "I feel lucky today." A few blocks from the church, Detective Elena Vasquez leaned over her desk at the Naples police station. A cup of cold coffee sat next to her unsolved case files. As the only female detective in the department, and a Latina at that, she was used to working twice as hard to prove herself. Elena was currently working on a series of burglaries in the city's affluent neighborhoods. The case was becoming political, with influential residents pressuring the department for quick results. "Hey, Vasquez," Sergeant called out as he walked by. "How's the Riverview case coming along?" "Working on it," Elena replied, her eyes fixed on the crime scene photos. "There are some leads. In all cases, the perpetrator bypassed the alarm systems in the same way. I think it's a professional." "I'm expecting results by Wednesday," Dawson said over his shoulder. Elena sighed and leaned back in her chair. Her attention was drawn to a note in the local newspaper lying on the table next to her. The photo showed the local pastor presenting a charity check to a children's hospital. The caption read, "Pastor Mitchell Bernard and the Eternal Light Church have raised a record amount for the children's cancer ward." At least someone is doing something good in this town, Elena thought as she returned to her files. She had no idea that fate would soon bring her together with this exemplary citizen under much darker circumstances. A tense silence reigned in the Bernards' cozy home in the suburbs of Naples. Rebecca sat on the living room sofa, flipping through a magazine, but not seeing a single word. Her thoughts were preoccupied with her husband, who had become increasingly distant in recent months. Rebecca couldn't remember the last time they had really talked, or simply spent time together without Mitchell constantly looking at his phone. Muffled music could be heard coming from Sarah's room. Rebecca walked over and knocked softly. "Yes?" her daughter replied. Rebecca opened the door slightly. Sarah was sitting at her computer, working on a school project. "How's it going?" "Okay," Sarah shrugged. "Mom, is Dad okay? He's been acting kind of strange lately." Rebecca forced a smile. "He's just busy with church. You know how serious he is about his responsibilities." "Probably," Sarah replied uncertainly. "He just doesn't laugh like he used to, and he's always gone somewhere." Rebecca didn't know what to say. She was tormented by the same questions. Her thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of the phone. The screen lit up with Mitchell. "Yes, dear?" she answered. "Rebecca, I'm going to be even later than I thought." Her husband's voice sounded tense. "Don't wait up for me for dinner." "Mitchell, what's going on? This is the 4th night this week." "Nothing's going on," he replied too quickly. "Just work. We're preparing for a charity event." "Maybe I can help? I've always been involved in organizing these kinds of events." "No," Mitchell replied sharply, then softened his tone. "No, thank you. Everything's under control. Derek Wells is helping me with the financial side." "Okay," Rebecca conceded. "Sarah and I will be home." In the small office of the Eternal Light Church, Derek Wells, the church accountant, frowned as he looked at the numbers on his computer screen. Something didn't add up again. For the 3rd month in a row, he had noticed small discrepancies in the accounts. Nothing too obvious, but as a meticulous and responsible person, he couldn't ignore these inconsistencies. Derek wasn't just an accountant. He considered serving the church his calling. A short, thin, middle-aged man with thin-rimmed glasses, he didn't stand out in the crowd of parishioners, but his meticulousness in financial matters was invaluable to the community. Glancing at his watch, he realized it was late, but decided to wait for Pastor Bernard. These financial issues needed clarification. An hour later, the office door opened and Mitchell entered. Seeing Derek, he couldn't hide his surprise and, it seemed, irritation. "Derek? What are you doing here so late?" "Good evening, Pastor Bernard," Derek said, rising from his desk. "I was reviewing the donation reports for the last quarter and found some discrepancies." Mitchell froze. "What discrepancies?" "Donations from last month's charity concert. According to my calculations, there should have been 3,000 more than what is reflected in the final report." "It must be some kind of mistake," Mitchell said, walking over to the table, trying to look interested but not concerned. "I'll check my records." "I also noticed that the roof repair bill was paid twice," Derek continued. "Once through the church account and once in cash, but the report to the council shows only one payment." "Derek," Mitchell put his hand on the accountant's shoulder, his voice becoming earnest, as if he were preaching, "you've done an excellent job of identifying these discrepancies. I'll take care of it personally. Most likely these are just bureaucratic errors. But I think we should inform the council." "There's no need to bother them with some clerical misunderstanding," Mitchell interrupted him. "I'll fix everything by the next report, I promise." Derek reluctantly agreed, but something about the pastor's behavior made him feel uneasy. Over the years of working with numbers, he had learned to see patterns where others saw coincidences. And now his intuition told him that there was something more behind these mistakes. When Derek left, Mitchell sank heavily into his chair. The phone in his pocket vibrated. He looked at the screen and paled when he saw Victor Reyes's name. With a trembling finger, he rejected the call. Mitchell opened his desk drawer and took out a flask of whiskey. Taking a large swig, he glanced at the framed photo, the smiling faces of Rebecca and Sarah in front of the church. Faces that believed in him, trusted him, saw him as a pillar of strength. Shame and fear overwhelmed him. "What have I done?" he whispered into the emptiness of the office. "What am I still doing?" The phone vibrated again. This time, it was a message from Victor Reyes. "Time is running out, Pastor. Either the money or I'll visit your lovely family." Mitchell Bernard, respected pastor of Eternal Light Church, preacher of righteousness and moral values, covered his face with his hands and wept silently. 3 o'clock in the morning. The light from his laptop screen was the only source of light in Mitchell Bernard's office. The pastor, dressed in a wrinkled shirt and with eyes inflamed from lack of sleep, clicked the mouse, placing bet after bet virtual cards flashed across the screen. He was losing. Again. "One more game," Mitchell muttered, entering the church credit card details. "I'll pay it all back as soon as I win." Over the past month, it had become a mantra. The amount he needed to pay back grew with each passing week. At first, It was small loans from the Poor Relief Fund. Then, it was part of the donations for a new church roof. Now he was using money collected for the children's cancer ward. The ringing of the phone made him flinch. Reyes lit up on the screen. Mitchell stared at the name, feeling his heart pounding somewhere in his throat. He knew he couldn't ignore this call forever. Yes? The pastor's voice trembled. Good morning, Pastor Bernard. Victor Reyes's voice was unexpectedly soft, with a slight accent. I hope I didn't wake you and your lovely family. What do you want? What's mine? $38,000 plus interest. The deadline was yesterday. I need more time. Mitchell clenched the phone so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I almost have the money. That's what you said a week ago. Reyes's voice took on a steely tone. I'm not a bank, Pastor. I don't give extensions. You have 2 days. After that, I'll be forced to use alternative collection methods. Don't touch my family, Mitchell exhaled. That's entirely up to you, Reyes replied. By the way, your daughter has music lessons every Tuesday at 5, right? On Oak Street? Mitchell froze. How did you know? 2 days, Pastor. Reyes cut him off. Mitchell threw down the phone and covered his face with his hands. How had he ended up living like this? It had started so innocently, a couple of online bets, small wins, growing excitement. Then the losses, big losses that he tried to recoup by borrowing more and more. And now, threats from a man he knew only that Victor Reyes didn't make empty threats. He glanced at his watch. Dawn was approaching, which meant Rebecca would be waking up soon. Mitchell closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes. 2 days. He had 2 days to find nearly $40,000. At the Bernards' house, Rebecca lay awake, listening to the sounds coming from her husband's study. She used to be able to read Mitchell like an open book. Now he had become a stranger, irritable, secretive, constantly checking his phone. Several times she had noticed the smell of alcohol, which he tried to mask with mint gum. Mitchell Bernard, who had once preached against even moderate drinking, now hid a bottle in his study. Rebecca sat up in bed and turned on the lamp. Sleep still wouldn't come. She opened the top drawer of the nightstand and took out the bills she had found last week while going through the mail. Credit limit overage notices, a cell phone bill with numerous calls to an unknown number, a letter from the bank about overdue mortgage payments. A sudden thought made her shiver. She remembered the family safe where she and Mitchell kept their savings and documents. She hadn't checked its contents for several months. Rebecca quietly got out of bed and headed for the dressing room. Pushing aside the clothes hangers, she dialed the combination on the small safe built into the wall. Their wedding date. The door opened, and Rebecca froze, staring at the almost empty interior. The envelope with cash they kept for emergencies was gone. So was her jewelry, inherited from her mother. "Oh, Mitchell," she whispered, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "What have you done?" The next morning, the charity committee meeting was held at Eternal Light Church. Mitchell sat at the head of the table, struggling to concentrate on the discussion. His gaze kept returning to the door, where Derek Wells stood holding a folder of documents and looking at the pastor with undisguised concern. "So, the opening of the new wing of the Children's Hospital is scheduled for next month, and our church has pledged a donation of $50,000, said Martha Simmons, an energetic woman who headed the community's charitable initiatives. "Pastor Bernard, will you be speaking at the ceremony?" Mitchell forced himself back into the conversation. "Yes, of course. It's a great honor for our community." "Excellent," Martha nodded. "Derek, are the funds ready to be transferred?" Derek cleared his throat. "I'd like to discuss this with Pastor Bernard in private." A whisper rippled through the room. Mitchell quickly interjected. "Just some technical details. Nothing serious. I think we'll end the meeting here. Thank you all for participating." When the committee members dispersed, Mitchell gestured for Derek to follow him into his office. As soon as the door closed, his friendly facade disappeared. "What's the matter, Derek?" You shouldn't have brought up financial matters in front of everyone. Derek placed the folder on the table and opened it, revealing tables and graphs. Pastor Bernard, I have conducted a full audit of the church's accounts for the past 6 months. Over $80,000 is missing. Mitchell felt the room begin to spin. There must be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Derek took off his glasses and looked the pastor straight in the eye. I've checked everything 3 times. The money collected for the children's hospital, for church repairs, even from the relief fund, it's all gone. And what's worse, someone forged my signature on several checks. What are you saying? Mitchell tried to feign righteous indignation, but his voice trembled. I think you know what I mean. Derek straightened up. Pastor Bernard, I've always respected you. Everyone in this community respects you. But I can't turn a blind eye to the theft of church funds. Derek, listen. Mitchell walked around the table and put his hand on the accountant's shoulder. I've been having some temporary financial difficulties. I borrowed this money. I'm going to pay back every cent. When? Soon. Very soon. I just need a little time. I've already given you time. Derek took a step back. When I noticed the first discrepancies, I hoped it was a mistake. When I saw the money continuing to disappear, I hoped you had a good reason. But this has gone too far. What are you going to do? Mitchell felt cold sweat beading on his forehead. If you don't return the money and confess to the board by the end of the week, I'll be forced to give them a full report. Derek gathered his papers and headed for the door. I'm very sorry, but I have no choice. When the door closed, Mitchell slumped into a chair. The circle was closing in. Victor Reyes, Derek Wells. How much longer before Rebecca found out the truth? In a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of Naples, Mitchell Bernard sat in a far corner, nervously twirling a glass of whiskey in his hands. This establishment was far enough from the church to rule out the risk of encountering parishioners. Here, in the semi-darkness, among strangers, he could briefly shed his mask of pious pastor. The bell above the entrance door jingled. Mitchell looked up and saw Victor Reyes entering. He was of medium height, fit, with a neatly trimmed beard and calm eyes that seemed to see right through a person. Dressed in an expensive but understated suit, he looked more like a successful businessman than a loan shark with ties to the criminal world. Reyes sat down across from Mitchell without ordering a drink. Pastor Bernard, I'm glad you decided to meet in person. I had no choice. Mitchell took a sip of whiskey, wincing at the burn. I came to ask for a deferment. Extension? Reyes raised an eyebrow. Our terms were perfectly clear when you took out the first loan, and the second, and the third. I need a little more time. I've almost got the money together. Almost isn't the same as got together. Reyes leaned forward. You know what's interesting, Pastor? I've lent money to a lot of people. Gamblers, drug addicts, desperate businessmen. But you're the first preacher on my list. A man who teaches others about morality and righteousness. Mitchell lowered his gaze. I made a mistake. Not just one, Reyes corrected him. You keep gambling, don't you? Even now when your life is falling apart. How do you know? I know my clients. Reyes smiled without a hint of amusement. And I know that gambling addiction is one of the strongest. You won't stop, Pastor. You can't stop. You're wrong, Mitchell objected. I'm quitting. As soon as I pay you back, I'll never... Don't play these games with me, Reyes interrupted. You've already sold your soul to the devil. The only question is, at what price? He took a photograph out of his jacket's inside pocket and placed it on the table. It was a picture of Sarah leaving school. A beautiful girl, Reyes said. Very talented, I hear, especially in music. Mitchell grabbed the photo with trembling hands. Don't you dare threaten my family. It's not a threat. It's motivation. Reyes stood up. 2 days, Pastor. Not a minute more. Otherwise, your family will pay for your sins. Detective Elena Vasquez sat in her car, watching the entrance to an expensive condominium in Riverview, a neighborhood where a series of burglaries had occurred. According to her theory, the perpetrator chose victims by studying their daily routines and then struck while they were away. Now she was watching a suspicious man who had been showing up in the area at around the same time for 2 days in a row. When Elena noticed the man getting into a taxi, she quickly started the engine and followed him at a safe distance. The taxi stopped near Mike's bar, not the most respectable establishment in town. The man went inside, and Elena decided to follow him to get a clearer picture of the potential suspect. In the cool, dim light of the bar, she looked around and spotted her target at the counter. After placing her order, Elena positioned herself so that she had a good view without attracting attention. That's when she noticed them. 2 men in the far corner engaged in an intense conversation. She recognized one of them from photos in local newspapers, Pastor Mitchell Bernard of the Eternal Light Church. Elena was surprised to see a respected religious figure in such a place, and with a man who, judging by his body language, clearly frightened the pastor. The second man placed a photograph on the table, and Elena noticed the pastor turn pale. A few minutes later, Bernard's companion got up and left the bar, leaving the pastor alone with his untouched drink. When Mitchell finally left the bar, Elena, obeying her professional curiosity, followed him to the parking lot. There, she deliberately bumped into him, pretending not to be looking where she was going. "I'm sorry," she feigned sincere surprise. "I didn't see you." Mitchell, lost in thought, barely glanced at her. "It's okay." "Wait a minute," Elena pretended to recognize him. "You're Pastor Bernard, right? From the Eternal Light Church?" Mitchell tensed. "Yes, that's me. I saw you on the news, that charity event for the children's hospital. It's so inspiring." "Thank you." He tried to smile, but it didn't come across very convincingly. "I'm sorry, but I have to go." "Of course," Elena nodded. "All the best, Pastor." Watching him hurry to his car, Elena wondered, what could a respected pastor be doing in a bar on the outskirts of town? And why did his conversation with that man upset him so much? It had nothing to do with her current case, but her professional instincts told her that there was something behind it. Back in her car, Elena wrote down Mitchell Bernard's license plate number, just in case. Rebecca Bernard sat in her husband's home office, feeling like a traitor. She had never snooped through Mitchell's things before. Their marriage was built on trust. But the missing savings, her husband's strange behavior, and her growing anxiety had forced her to cross that line. In the bottom drawer of the desk, under a stack of magazines, she found an envelope. Inside were printouts of emails and bank statements. With each page Rebecca looked at, her heart beat faster. Transfers to online casino accounts, loans with exorbitant interest rates, threatening letters from debt collectors, and worst of all, a receipt signed by Mitchell confirming a debt to a certain Victor Reyes in the amount of $45,000 with compound interest. "My God," she whispered. "Mitchell, what have you done?" There was another piece of paper in the envelope, an appraisal of their house done 2 weeks ago. In the margin, Mitchell had written, "Quick sale, $280,000. The office door creaked, and Rebecca turned with a start. Standing in the doorway was Sarah, their 15-year-old daughter, looking alarmed. "Mom, what are you doing in Dad's study?" Rebecca quickly hid the envelope back in the drawer. "Nothing, dear. Just looking for an address for a charity mailing." Sarah didn't look convinced. "You look upset." "I'm fine." Rebecca tried to smile. Sarah entered the room and closed the door behind her. "Mom, please. I'm not a child. I know something's going on. Dad's hardly ever home, and when he is, he's always locked in here. You've stopped talking to each other. He's become so different. Sarah, your father is going through a difficult time right now. He's under a lot of pressure at church." "It's not just a difficult time," Sarah insisted. "Yesterday I saw him leave the house at 3 a.m, and last week when he didn't know I was home, I heard him yelling at someone on the phone, begging for something. It's scary, Mom." Rebecca hugged her daughter. Don't worry, we'll figure this out. I'll talk to him when the time is right. You promise? I promise. After Sarah left, Rebecca opened the drawer again and took out the envelope. She took several photos of the documents with her phone. She needed time to think about how to approach her husband with what she had discovered. Right now, she knew only one thing. Their family was in far greater danger than she could have imagined. Derek Wells sat in the office of Frank Dawson, the chairman of the church council. As an accountant, he was used to order, to numbers that always added up. But now he had to report the misconduct of a man he deeply respected. So, Derek, Frank Dawson folded his hands on the table. You said this was urgent? Yes. Derek nervously adjusted his glasses. It's about the church's finances, more specifically, about violations. Violations? Derek took a deep breath. Mr. Dawson, over the past 6 months, more than $80,000 has disappeared from the church's accounts. I conducted a thorough audit and made sure it wasn't a mistake. Someone has been systematically embezzling funds, including donations for the children's hospital. Dawson's face became serious. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence? Derek placed a folder on the table. A complete report with all the discrepancies. And something else. He paused. My signature has been forged on several checks. I am absolutely certain of this. Someone from the church staff? I believe it is Pastor Bernard. There was a long pause. Frank Dawson leaned back in his chair. Pastor Bernard, are you accusing our pastor of embezzling church funds? I talked to him about it, Derek said, not looking away. He didn't deny it outright. He said he took the money on loan and intends to pay it back. I gave him a chance to do so, but the situation is only getting worse. Do you understand the consequences this could have? I understand, Derek nodded. But aren't we responsible to the people who have entrusted us with their donations? Frank Dawson slowly opened the folder and began looking through the documents. With each page, his face grew darker. I'll call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow, he finally said. Pastor Bernard will have to answer these allegations. Mitchell Bernard sat in his car, parked 2 blocks from his house. He couldn't bring himself to go back, not now, when his whole life was falling apart. His phone vibrated every few minutes. Messages from the church secretary, from Derek, from the chairman of the church council, and from Victor Reyes, a short reminder. 24 hours, Pastor. 24 hours before Reyes came for his money. Mitchell didn't have. He ran his hands through his hair, clutching his head as if trying to physically keep his sanity from falling apart. How had he gotten himself into this? When had that first bet, that first small win, turned into this all-consuming black hole? His phone vibrated again. A message from Frank Dawson. Emergency council meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Your presence is required. Subject: financial irregularities. So Derek had gone to the board after all. There was no time left. Mitchell looked at the glove compartment where the gun lay. He had bought it several years ago to protect his family, and only Rebecca knew about its existence. Now the gun seemed like the only way out. One shot, and it would all be over. No debts, no shame, no explanations. But even in this dark moment of despair, images of Rebecca and Sarah held him back. What would happen to them if he chose this path? The insurance wouldn't pay out in the event of suicide. They would be left alone, with his debts, his shame. There had to be another way. The gun no longer seemed like the solution to his problems, but perhaps it could be the solution to his family's problems. Mitchell slowly took out a sheet of paper and a pen. Rebecca and Sarah, he wrote. I'm sorry for everything. I see no way out. Please know that I loved you more than anything in the world. Putting the note in his pocket, he started the car. He needed to meet with a man who could offer a way out, even if it was a terrible one. Victor Reyes slumped in his chair in his spacious office, looking out the window at Naples Bay. For a man whose business existed on the edge of the law, he preferred to conduct his affairs relatively openly. The door opened, and his assistant, Carlos, entered. Any news about our pastor? Reyes asked without turning around. Yes, boss. He just received a summons to a church council meeting tomorrow morning. The topic is financial irregularities. Reyes smirked. So his little secrets are coming out. What are we going to do? The deadline is tomorrow. Nothing changes. Reyes turned to Carlos. He has to pay by 10 a.m. If not. Reyes's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and smiled. Speak of the devil. Our pastor is calling. Reyes picked up the phone. Pastor Bernard, what do I owe you? We need to meet. Mitchell's voice sounded strangely calm. Now. I thought we had everything settled. Do you have my money? I have a proposal. Something that might interest you more than money. Reyes raised an eyebrow. Intriguing. Come to my office in an hour. After ending the call, Reyes looked at Carlos. It seems our pastor friend is ready to take desperate measures. This could be interesting. Detective Elena Vasquez sat in her car, watching the office building where Reyes Consulting was located. For the past 2 weeks, she had been quietly surveilling Victor Reyes, suspecting him of involvement in a series of robberies in wealthy neighborhoods in Naples. There was little evidence, but her intuition screamed that Reyes was the key to the case. Through her car window, she spotted a familiar figure entering the building. Pastor Mitchell Bernard, whom she had met at a bar a few days ago, was now heading to the office of a man under police surveillance. What connected a respected religious figure with a man like Reyes? Elena took several photos and noted the time of the meeting. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but in her line of work, coincidences were rare. An hour later, Mitchell Bernard left the building. Even from a distance, Elena could see that he was pale and moved as if carrying a heavy burden. He got into his car and sat motionless for several minutes, his hands on the steering wheel and his head bowed. Something was going on with this man, and whatever it was clearly not good. Elena decided to continue her surveillance, first of Reyes, and then perhaps of Pastor Bernard. Her professional instincts told her that she had stumbled upon something much more serious than she had initially thought. Returning home late in the evening, Mitchell found Rebecca still awake. She was sitting in the living room with a book she clearly wasn't reading. In the hour he had been watching the house from his car, she hadn't turned a single page. "You're late," Rebecca said when he entered. "A lot of work at church," Mitchell muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Mitchell!" Rebecca put down her book. "What's going on? And please don't tell me it's church work again. I know that's not it." Mitchell froze, feeling his pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" "You're pulling away from us. You're always going out. You've stopped sleeping at night. And now even Sarah is noticing that something's wrong with you." "I just need some time," Mitchell said. "Some things at church." "Stop it!" Rebecca raised her voice, then took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "I don't know what's going on, but I know it's not just some things at church. If we have problems, financial, personal, whatever, we have to deal with them together." Mitchell looked at his wife, who still knew nothing about the depth of the hole he had dragged them into. If she knew about the debts, about the church money, about Reyes, she would look at him differently, with contempt. With disgust, he couldn't bear that. "It's okay, Rebecca," he lied, approaching her and kissing her on the forehead. "It's just stress. Everything will be fine, I promise." She looked at him doubtfully, but didn't pursue the matter. "Is Sarah asleep yet?" Mitchell asked, changing the subject. "Yes, she went to bed an hour ago." "Good," he said, turning toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed too. Tomorrow is an important day." In his daughter's bedroom, Mitchell quietly opened the door and looked at Sarah sleeping. In the darkness of the room, he allowed himself to do something he hadn't done in a long time. He prayed. Not for show, not for the congregation, but sincerely, from the bottom of his heart. "Lord," he whispered, "I know I don't deserve your mercy. I lied, I stole, I betrayed everything I believed in. But I beg you, protect my family. They are innocent of my sins." Returning to his bedroom, Mitchell saw that Rebecca had already gone to bed, turning her back to the wall. He carefully opened the nightstand drawer and placed the note he had written in the car inside. Then he lay down next to his wife, knowing that this might be their last night together. The plan was set. Tomorrow he would meet with the church council at 9 a.m. Then, at 10, he would meet with Reyes in his office, and after that, the deal would be done, protecting his family at the price he was willing to pay. The morning was unusually quiet at the Bernard home. Mitchell woke up before dawn, carefully got out of bed, trying not to wake Rebecca, and stood under the shower for a long time, as if trying to wash away the burden of the day ahead. Today at 9 a.m., the church council was waiting for him, where he would have to answer charges of financial misconduct. At 10 a.m., the deadline for paying Victor Reyes's debt was due. After getting dressed, he went downstairs and found Rebecca at the kitchen table. In front of her were papers, the very documents he had so carefully hidden. His receipt to Reyes, casino account statements, threatening letters from creditors. "We need to talk, Mitchell." Rebecca's voice sounded calm, but behind that calmness, he could sense tension ready to explode. "I know everything." Mitchell froze in the doorway, feeling the ground slip away from under his feet. All his plans, all his carefully thought-out steps were crumbling before his eyes. "Rebecca, I can explain." "Really?" She looked up at him. "Can you explain why you stole our savings? Why you pawned my jewelry? Why you took money from the church treasury? Why did you owe some gangster $45,000? Each question hit him like a slap in the face. Mitchell slowly sank into a chair opposite his wife. "I made a mistake." His voice trembled. "It started with small bets. Then I lost more than I could afford. I tried to win it back, borrowed money, thinking I could pay it all back after one big win. And the church money? Money collected for the treatment of sick children?" Mitchell lowered his gaze. "I was going to pay it back, every cent." "But you didn't." Rebecca shook her head. "And now you're facing a church council, and this man, Reyes, is threatening you, threatening us." At that moment, a sleepy Sarah entered the kitchen. Seeing her parents and the papers on the table, she stopped. "What's going on?" she asked. "Sarah, go to your room," Mitchell began, but Rebecca interrupted him. "No, Mitchell, no more secrets. She's part of this family too. She has a right to know." "Know what?" Sarah approached the table, her eyes widening when she saw the documents. "Dad, what is this?" "Your father." Rebecca looked at her husband bitterly. "Your father has a gambling problem. He lost all our savings, took money from the church, and now owes a very dangerous man." Sarah looked at her father, her face expressing shock and disbelief. "Is this true?" Mitchell couldn't bear that look, a look in which disappointment replaced years of adoration. "Yes," he replied quietly. "It's true." "We're going to go to the police," Rebecca continued, gathering her papers. "Tell them about Reyes's threats, and you're going to confess everything you've done to the church council." "No!" Mitchell stood up abruptly. "You don't understand. Reyes is not someone to mess with. If I don't pay him today, he'll come after us. All of us." "Then what do you suggest?" Rebecca asked demandingly. "Run away? Hide for the rest of our lives?" "I have a plan." Mitchell tried to sound convincing. "I've made an agreement with Reyes. Everything will be fine. Just trust me." "Trust you?" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "After all the lies? After you jeopardized everything we had?" "Dad," Sarah's voice trembled. "What plan? What are you going to do?" Mitchell looked at his daughter, then at his wife. He felt despair rising inside him. His carefully laid plans were falling apart, and with them, his last hope of protecting his family. "I'm going to meet with Reyes after the council meeting," he finally said. "I have something he wants more than money." "What?" Rebecca demanded. Mitchell hesitated. "Information about some influential parishioners who could be useful to his business." Lying was becoming easier for him, but Rebecca saw right through him. "You're lying." she said so quietly that Mitchell could barely hear her. "You're still lying to us." She got up and picked up the phone. "I'm calling the police." "No!" Mitchell rushed toward her, trying to grab the phone. "You don't understand. You'll ruin everything." "Let go of me," Rebecca shouted, pushing him away. "Dad, stop it." Sarah tried to pull her father away. It was as if Mitchell was watching the events unfold from the sidelines. He saw his hands clenching his wife's shoulders, the fear distorting Sarah's face, everything he had tried to preserve crumbling before his eyes. Then there was a scream, a struggle, a kitchen knife grabbed in panic, and blood. So much blood. Detective Elena Vasquez sat at her desk at the police station, reviewing the surveillance reports on Victor Reyes. 2 days ago, she had seen Pastor Mitchell Bernard enter Reyes's office, and that fact had been bothering her. "Detective Vasquez," the officer on duty called out to her. "You have a visitor. He says it's urgent." A nervous man with glasses was waiting for her in the reception area, fidgeting with a folder of documents. "I'm Derek Wells, accountant for the Eternal Light Church," he introduced himself when Elena approached. "I need help. I'm worried about Pastor Bernard and his family." Elena led him into the conference room. "Why are you concerned, Mr. Wells?" Derek nervously adjusted his glasses. "There was supposed to be a church council meeting this morning. We were going to discuss some financial irregularities I discovered. Pastor Bernard didn't show up. He's always punctual, always answers his phone. But today, nothing. Maybe he just decided to avoid an unpleasant conversation? It's not just that." Derek opened the folder. "I discovered that over the past few months, Pastor Bernard has embezzled more than $80,000 of church funds. When I asked him about it, he said he had borrowed the money and that he was having financial problems. He looked scared." Elena sat up straight. "What other financial problems?" "I'm not sure, but yesterday I overheard him on the phone. He was talking to someone about money, about a deadline that expires today. And," Derek hesitated, "about threats to his family." Elena's alarm grew. "Have you tried to contact Mrs. Bernard?" "Yes. Neither she nor their daughter Sarah are answering their phones. Sarah didn't come to school today, although no one reported her absence." Elena recalled her observations of Reyes and his meeting with Bernard. The picture was becoming alarming. "Mr. Wells, I'll send patrol officers to check the Bernard's house. In the meantime, tell me everything you know about the pastor's financial problems." Mitchell Bernard worked methodically, with the detachment of someone performing a routine task. He wiped surfaces, collected evidence, and packed the necessary items. His mind seemed to have shut down from the reality of what was happening, switching into survival mode. Rebecca and Sarah's bodies lay on the kitchen floor, covered with sheets. He couldn't bring himself to look at them, couldn't comprehend that he had just destroyed not only his own life, but also the lives of those he loved most. It was an accident, he told himself. He didn't mean for it to happen. He had just lost control for a moment, and when he came back to reality, it was too late. Too late. Mitchell took his phone out of his pocket and dialed the number he had promised himself he would never use. "Reyes," a familiar voice answered. "It's Bernard." Mitchell's voice sounded strange even to himself, mechanical, emotionless. "I need help." There was a pause. "What kind of help, Pastor?" "Your people are the ones who take care of problems. I need their help. Now." Another pause. "This will cost more than you already owe me." "Money is not a problem. I have insurance. 500,000. "Are you sure this is necessary?" Mitchell looked at the figures covered with sheets on the floor. "Yes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't call anyone else." Mitchell put down the phone and looked at his hands. They were clean. He had washed them thoroughly, but he felt as if they were still covered in blood. Rebecca and Sarah's screams, their pleas, their last words echoed in his head. He forced himself back to reality. He had to destroy the evidence, prepare a story. The family had left. Where? To visit Rebecca's relatives in Florida? No, too easy to check. Maybe a sudden trip to Europe? Yes, that could work. He could say they were gone for a few weeks, buy some time. His thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. Reyes couldn't have arrived so quickly. Mitchell froze, listening. "Naples police," came the voice through the door. "Mr. Bernard, are you home?" The first patrol officer to arrive at the Bernards' house noticed something unusual almost immediately. The family car was in the driveway, but no one answered the door. Through the living room window, he saw unusual disorder: overturned furniture, scattered belongings. After reporting the suspicious circumstances, he called for backup. By the time Detective Vasquez arrived, the house was cordoned off. "What's the situation?" she asked, approaching the senior patrol officer. "No one's answering, but the car's here. There are signs of a struggle visible through the window. We knocked and announced ourselves, but there was no response." Elena nodded. "We have sufficient reason to be concerned about the safety of the occupants. Break down the door." Two officers with a battering ram quickly carried out the order. The door gave way on the third blow, and the police entered with their weapons at the ready. "Police! Is anyone in the house?" Their shouts echoed through the empty rooms. Elena followed, scanning the space with a professional eye. The living room was indeed in disarray: an overturned coffee table, scattered magazines, a broken vase. A struggle, or an attempt to stage a robbery? "Detective!" An officer's shout from the kitchen made her rush there. What she saw was forever etched in her memory. Two figures on the floor, carelessly covered with blood-soaked sheets, a kitchen knife discarded in the corner, traces of blood, partially wiped away but still visible on the floor and walls. "Call the forensic team and the coroner," she ordered, moving closer, "and start looking for Pastor Bernard. He's now the prime suspect." Victor Reyes sat in his car, watching the activity near the Bernards' house. Police cars, a forensic van, an ambulance, everything indicated that something serious had happened. He cursed under his breath. The pastor had been weaker than he had expected. Over the next 6 hours, the crime scene was thoroughly processed by forensic experts. The bodies of Rebecca and Sarah Bernard were identified and sent to the morgue for autopsy. The pathologist's preliminary conclusion indicated multiple stab wounds inflicted with great force. Detective Vasquez led the investigation, methodically gathering evidence. The story was beginning to take shape, and it was a grim one. "What do we have?" she asked the medical examiner who was examining the crime scene. "The bloodstains indicate that the murder took place here in the kitchen. Judging by the splatters, the first victim was the woman, Mrs. Bernard. The girl probably tried to escape or protect her mother, but she also suffered multiple wounds." "Time of death?" "Between 7 and 9 a.m. today." Elena nodded. "Just before the church council meeting." "There's something else." The expert pointed to the marks on the floor. "Someone tried to clean up here. They used bleach to wash away the blood, but they did it in a hurry, very clumsily." "The perpetrator was in a panic," Elena said thoughtfully. "What about other evidence?" "We found a note in the master bedroom. It looks like a suicide note, and insurance policy documents in Mrs. Bernard's name. In the event of her husband's death, she would have received $500,000. And in the event of her death? Mitchell Bernard is listed as the beneficiary." Elena frowned. "So we have a financial motive check when this policy was taken out." "Already checked 3 weeks ago." The picture was becoming clearer. Mitchell Bernard, cornered by financial problems and threats, had decided to take a desperate step. But something had gone wrong. Perhaps Rebecca had discovered his plans. Perhaps there had been a confrontation, and in a moment of panic, he had done the irreparable. 3 days. That's how long it had been since the bodies of Rebecca and Sarah Bernard were found in their family home. Detective Elena Vasquez, who hadn't slept in over 40 hours, stood at the evidence board, methodically piecing together the chronology of events. "Bernard started gambling about 6 months ago," she told her colleagues. "First small bets, then bigger ones, the classic spiral of addiction. She pointed to the printouts of bank statements. At some point, he turned to Reyes. The first loan was 3 months ago. To pay off his debts, he started embezzling church funds. The motive is clear, one of the detectives remarked. A man backed into a corner, financial ruin, imminent exposure. Yes, but the insurance policy adds a new layer. Elena attached the document. It was taken out 3 weeks before the murder. In the event of Rebecca's death, the $500,000 payout goes to her husband. That suggests planning. Or coincidence, another detective objected. People often review their insurance policies in times of crisis. In any case, we have what we have. Elena rubbed her eyes. Bernard's fingerprints on the murder weapon, his blood on the victim's clothes, an attempt to hide the evidence. Flight. The door opened, and the captain entered. We have a lead. Bernard was seen at the Sunset Motel. The owner identified him from a photo. Elena began to give orders, but was interrupted by a phone call. Detective Vasquez. Understood. Bring him here. She turned to the team. Bernard has been apprehended. The highway patrol stopped him. He didn't resist. Mitchell Bernard looked like a man who had just come from his own funeral. Unshaven, with a dull look in his eyes, he sat across from Elena in the interrogation room. The orange jumpsuit made him look like any other prisoner, not a respected pastor. Mr. Bernard, I'm Detective Vasquez. Have you been read your rights? Mitchell nodded. I understand everything. Elena turned on the tape recorder. Tell me what happened on the morning of the 15th. I went downstairs for breakfast and saw Rebecca in the kitchen. There were papers in front of her. My IOUs, statements, evidence of my gambling problem. He paused. She said she knew everything. About the money I took from the church. About the debt to Reyes. She was disappointed. She said she was going to call the police. Then Sarah came in, and Rebecca told her. His hands began to shake. I didn't want Sarah to know. I panicked. Rebecca took the phone and I tried to take it away from her. We fought. Sarah tried to pull us apart. He took a deep breath. I don't remember how the knife ended up in my hand. I only remember the screams, and then I realized what I had done. You stabbed your wife 12 times, Elena said. Your daughter 8 times. That doesn't sound like an accident. Mitchell covered his face with his hands. I don't remember. I was out of my mind, but I know it was me. What did you do after that? I tried to cover my tracks. I wanted to call Reyes, but I saw the police cars and ran away. I just didn't know what to do. You took out an insurance policy 3 weeks before the murder. Why? I was going to kill myself. He looked her in the eyes. I wanted Rebecca and Sarah to get the money. But then I thought Reyes would come to them anyway, demanding the debt. And so you decided it would be better if they died and you got the money? No. His face contorted. I would never have done that. It was an accident. A terrible accident. But an accident. The Eternal Light Church was overflowing. The memorial service for Rebecca and Sarah was attended not only by parishioners, but also by many townspeople who were shocked by the tragedy. Frank Dawson, chairman of the church council, stood at the pulpit. Today we mourn 2 beautiful people whose lives were cut short so tragically. His voice trembled. Rebecca was the heart of our community, kind, caring. Sarah, who inherited her mother's best qualities, was a bright, talented child. He paused. We also recognize that a person we trusted committed an unforgivable betrayal, not only against the family, but against all of us. In the back rows, Derek Wells was quietly sobbing. After the service, Elena Vasquez approached him. You mustn't blame yourself, she said. You did what you had to do. I could have noticed earlier. Derek shook his head. I could have insisted on an immediate investigation. And maybe nothing would have changed, Elena gently objected. Sometimes when a person decides to go down a dark path, it's impossible to stop them. The trial of Mitchell Bernard became the most high-profile case in the county's history. Despite the defendant's confession, the defense attempted to argue temporary insanity. However, The prosecutor methodically presented the evidence: the insurance policy, financial fraud, attempts to conceal the crime. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning a verdict: guilty on all counts. When the judge asked if the defendant had anything to say before sentencing, Mitchell slowly rose. "I stand before you not as a pastor, not as a husband or father. I have lost those titles forever. I stand as a man who has lost everything, not because of an accident or bad luck, but because of my own decisions." He spoke quietly, but clearly. "Every day, I relive those moments in the kitchen over and over again. Every night, I hear their screams. No punishment can compare to what I am already going through, but I deserve worse." The judge sentenced Mitchell Bernard to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. A month later, Elena Vasquez received a request from Mitchell Bernard to meet. After some hesitation, she agreed. In the prison visiting room, Bernard looked even more emaciated. Prison life had not been kind to the former pastor. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I needed to finish something." He placed an envelope on the table. "Here is information about the location of the remaining church funds. I didn't spend it all. I hid some of it." Elena took the envelope. "I'll pass this on to the investigators." "And one more thing," he said, handing her a folded piece of paper. "I wrote a letter to Rebecca's parents. They are the only family she has left. Could you give it to them?" "I will," Elena nodded. "Can I ask you a question?" she asked. "When did it all start? When did you take the first step in the wrong direction?" Mitchell thought for a moment. "The worst thing is that I can't pinpoint a specific moment. There was no dramatic fall. It was a series of small compromises. Just one bet. This is the last time. I'll pay the money back. No one will notice." He shook his head. "I preached about morality, about honesty, and yet every day I gave in to my weaknesses, thinking I was in control, until I realized I had gone so far that I couldn't see a way back." "A difficult case?" asked the captain when Elena returned to the station. "One of the hardest," she admitted. "Not because of the investigation, the evidence was clear, but because of the human factor. Bernard isn't the first model citizen to commit a terrible crime. Yes, but usually we find that the impeccable facade has been hiding a dark nature for years. With Bernard, it's different. Everyone confirms that until recently, he really was what he seemed to be: a devoted husband, a loving father, a sincere pastor. And what changed? I think it's a matter of gradual moral compromise. Every time he made the wrong choice and got away with it, the barrier lowered a little more, until it became impossible to cross the line." "A frightening thought," remarked the captain, "that anyone could end up on that path." "That's exactly why I do this job," said Elena. "To remind people that actions have consequences. Always." The story of Mitchell Bernard is a grim reminder of how thin the line between virtue and downfall is, and how high the price is that not only those who cross that line pay, but also the people around them.